This podcast is part of Mishmash Media. Hey, buddy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Welcome to another episode of Curbcast. My name is Ivan.
And I'm Stephen.
And this is a podcast where we review every episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm in chronological order, scene by scene. And we're watching these for the very first time. And we're in the penultimate episode of Season 7, a very, very good one that I enjoyed a lot. And I said to you before we started recording, my friend, that this is probably the closest we'll ever get to seeing an actual Seinfeld table read and how a scene comes together, or how it came together on the show, and we're doing the table read today.
Yeah, classic episode. I've known about this episode for a while, being a Curb fan and doing the podcast, and it lived up to the expectations that I had for it. This is a fantastic episode for me. Can't really fault it. We'll do our review at the end. Obviously, we'll get down in a bit more detail, but I just was delighted by this episode entirely. And yeah, you're right. Closest we've seen and we'll probably ever see to a Seinfeld, any sort of reunion, like, them in the same room doing their thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it was just wonderful to see. Wonderful to see, the process of the table read and then the scene rehearsals. And then, we see in the final episode, Seinfeld, final episode of season 7, we see the actual episode itself. And it's just glorious watching the process.
Yeah, it's like they haven't skipped a beat, It's just like they didn't take 10 years off between the real end of Seinfeld and then, the quote-unquote Seinfeld episode in this episode of Curb. It's like they took a week off, not a decade off. Yeah, it's fantastic. Even if it's fictional and, it all doesn't fall apart, but it's not a smooth process. It's still tremendous to watch for sure.
Yeah, and I respect the fact that the core four, Jerry, Julia, Jason, and Michael, they kind of, especially in the scenes, like the meta kind of scenes where they were rehearsing the scenes and they were, recording the scenes, I appreciate how they didn't phone it in. Like, they just kept the same abilities as they did on the show. Like, they could have easily just phoned it in here, the actors, but they all went in, and it was a delight to see. I agree.
Yeah, like I said, it was like they didn't skip a beat, and it was just it was like a warm bath, slipping back in.
Yeah.
It just feels right. And I also like, we were talking about this a bit before we started recording, but I love the tension between all the four, and Larry as well, obviously. On set, they're professionals and they get along. They're there to do the job and do the best they can. But offset, there's little tensions between them and there's little frustrations between them, and they're all kind of weird in their own way. And I like that they did that. They didn't just show them as, good friends. I'm sure the set, on the real show had frustrations from time to time, because you would, if you're spending so much time with these people and 18-hour days and putting everything into it, you're going to get frustrated with these people, like your colleagues around you. But, for the most part, I'm sure it was friendly and nice, and they were sort of friends offset as well. But in this being Curb, it's got to be mostly, the relationships are mostly complicated. There's never any just like smooth, uncomplicated kind of normal relationships. There's always something, some tension, some history, some frustration, something between them. And I like that they did that for this one.
Yeah, I like that too. It just made it seem more real, It didn't feel like a, sappy sitcom.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have been Curb, if it showed them just getting along and all being nice to each other.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And we get Leon again. Leon's in this episode. Loved him in the couple of scenes he was in, and Larry he like he always is, JB, and Larry has had his first ever fan, a 9-year-old who actually loves Seinfeld, and it kind of lands him in trouble at times.
Yeah, for sure. That's a weird aspect of the story that we'll talk about when we get into those scenes. I'm sure you know what we're talking about if you've seen this episode, or you know what we're referring to. But a bit of an odd. It didn't detract from the episode for me, but just a uncomfortable topic in general, and the wording.
Very taboo as well.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you want to get in touch with us, we have an email address, curbcastpod@gmail.com. We're on social media as well. You can check out the links for those in the show notes. If you want to support us, we've got a Patreon, patreon.com/Mishmash Media, and for $1 US a month, you can get access to these episodes a bit earlier than the rest of the public when we publish. And if you don't want to support us financially, help us get us out there a bit more. Spread the word. Tell someone in your life who might like Curb about us, and that would be awesome.
That would be awesome, yeah. So if you can do that, that'll be great. Anyway, The Table Read, Season 7, Episode 9, aired in the US on HBO for the first time on November 15th, 2009. Rehearsals for the Seinfeld reunion show get complicated when Larry's text message exchange with a 9-year-old fan lands him in trouble with the local authorities. Meanwhile, Leon tries to fool Michael Richards. And I love these juicy bits of trivia about the episode, Steve. It's probably some of the best trivia I have seen in an episode for a long time in Curb. In this one, a feud erupts between Larry and Jason over a pen, and this is in reference to a real-life feud that Larry and Jason had at the time during the Seinfeld production. In the episode The Pen, Jason's character George doesn't appear at all, and apparently it was alleged that Jason at the time was very angry with Larry for not including George in the episode, and he threatened to quit the show over it. So, so there was like a televised feud in this episode over a pen, and a real-life feud between Larry and Jason over, quote-unquote, the pen.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I thought it was just referencing the pen episode in general. You know, a classic episode where Jerry takes a pen from Jack Compass, and it causes all sorts of issues between Jack and Jerry's parents and Jerry and the whole Boca Raton retirement community.
The retirement community, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was just referencing that episode in general. I didn't know it was about Jason Alexander and Larry David specifically. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was. Apparently Jason got so angry that he threatened to leave, and they're like, oh shit. And and then they vowed never to omit Jason from an episode again, omit George. So George was in every other episode since.
Yeah, no, look, good on him for sticking up for himself, and they made the right choice by, putting him in every episode after that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, so good for them. Very interesting how they got that real life scenario and they kind of twisted it in a sort of different way, and they incorporated it into this one. I like it.
It's almost like a meta version of what they're doing in this Curb episode, where events that have happened to Larry, between Larry and Cheryl, like them splitting up, are being written into this Seinfeld script. The fact that happened, the tension between Jason Alexander and Larry David about him not being in the pen has been written I don't know, it works on different layers. I really like that.
Yeah, no, me too. It really shows their dynamics there. It's good. Michael Richards, he's worried that he might have the fictional Groats disease, and you've probably seen or heard of Groats disease in an earlier episode of Curb. I think it was season 2, The Thong, when it was first mentioned. I thought that Michael said Crohn's disease, and I was like, oh, okay, so they're going to use like a real life disease for Michael, but no, it's actually Groats disease. So yeah, that's a reference to a made-up medical condition from the show from earlier on. At least if it's made up, you can just make up symptoms. You can make up, diagnosis, different diagnoses and stuff. And you don't need to offend anyone who has the disease. Or you won't offend anyone, by, upset anyone who's suffering from it because it's not real. So it makes sense to use it.
Yeah, it can be whatever you need it to be.
Yeah, for sure. For the purposes of comedy, yeah. And you'll love this one, Stephen. Many references from previous Curb episodes are part of the reunion storyline, including in the table read where they mention that Jerry cuts the hair of one of Elaine's children's dolls. It's in reference to that infamous episode with Larry cutting the doll's hair in The Doll. And Kramer hiring a prostitute named Menina, not for sex, but rather so he can use the express lane, like what happened in Curb. So a lot of incidents that happened in the Curb universe from Larry, they actually are incorporated into the reunion episode, which I find wonderful.
Yeah, that's just another example of what I was just talking about, where stuff that's happened between Larry and, Cheryl or whoever in the Curb universe is being written into this fictional Seinfeld episode, sort of going along with real life incidences between Jason and Larry being written into this episode, which is being used on set when they're doing. Yeah, it's 10-dimensional. I love it.
Oh, I love it too. It's like 8D chess,
Yeah.
Not 4D, 8D. Twice as good. Twice as smart.
It's 8D chess being played by a bunch of monkeys.
Basically, yes. Basically, but yeah, I can see why this is. I'm going to say now this is one of the best episodes of the season. We won't talk about it too much now, but yeah, I'll give a bit of a spoiler. But yeah, I can see why. It just the writing is just brilliant in this episode.
For sure.
Brilliant. Yeah. Anyway, enough gushing over it. Let's get into the nitty gritty of each scene. All right, scene 1 of the table read. Larry is standing in front of the Monks set. He and Julia are in awe of how the scene looks the same as it did in the past, and that they're back doing the show again. She asks about Larry and Cheryl and their relationship. Larry says that it's a professional one. She probes him about Cheryl's acting career, like what she's done, has she done any notable roles, etc., etc. She gets an inkling, that Cheryl got the role due to personal reasons, rather than her abilities. She walks off. Larry approaches Stacy, who introduces him to her 9-year-old daughter, Emma, and she says that Emma is a huge fan of Seinfeld and Larry. She gives him a hug as Emma walks off. Stacy says that she has to take Emma to the doctor as she has a quote-unquote rash on her pussy, which we talked about before, like why a mother would refer to her daughter's, that section of her daughter's body as a pussy. I get the feeling that Stacy's a pretty open chick. Like, I think she's probably one of those, mums who's just like, oh, it is what it is. It's your pussy, It is what it is. She's probably just pretty open with that sort of stuff. I don't know. She just seems like open sexually and stuff as well. It's like, she doesn't say, oh, my daughter's, nether regions or her private area or, her no-no area, whatever children call it. Yeah, I think she's just pretty open with her sexuality. And even to her daughter, she's just like, oh, it's your pussy. Simple as that.
Yeah, look, that's a generous take, and okay. I respect that, and I just think if this were real,
it's certainly odd.
But, if this were real, I don't think there's anything wrong with a parent being not sort of shaming their children's genitals, But pussy is, I would say, is mostly a sexualized description of a vagina. I mean, it's not always used in a sexual context, but I think its default premise is that it's a sexualized version of a not a version, but it's a sexualized description for a person's vagina. Yes. So using that just to describe your 9-year-old's vagina, I think is just a bit weird.
That is very weird. I'm not condoning it at all. I'm not saying she's, I'm not saying this is acceptable.
No. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that I think there's a middle ground between just being sexually open and liberal and being a prude, where you can talk to your 9-year-old daughter's genitals in an open and non-shaming way that isn't sexualized, and I think it's just the appropriate word usage. If you say, oh, your naughty bits or your nether region, that's kind of, like there's an element of shame attached to that. But using the word pussy is a bit inappropriate. There's a middle ground. And I think just using the word vagina or something, I don't know. I've never had to think about this scenario in real life. I'm just, thinking on the fly here, but it was just weird. At first, when she referred to the rash on her daughter's pussy, I thought it was maybe her cat, and Larry misunderstood it. And then at the end, I expected at the end of the episode that it was going to be her cat, and it was all going to be like Larry was going to be relieved, but it was the complete opposite. And we don't find out, and it's it's a funny storyline, and it created a lot of funny scenes that we'll discuss as we go along. But just it was very it sort of made me go, whoa,
very taboo.
I mean, Larry, like Curb often says and does things for shock value, and it always handles them delicately or intelligently. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, what are they going to do with this? And they kind of don't do anything, but it's still an essential part of the episode. It's an odd one, and I still don't know how I feel about it as a it's such a weird, uncomfortable, just the line and the topic, and it's a weird one.
The weird thing as well, first of all, I was expecting like a cat to show up later in the episode, and everything's right with the world. But I was surprised that the thing that shocks me the most about this subplot is the fact that Larry goes along with it, and he refers to Emma's area as her pussy as well. And I'm like, because at first he's like a bit stunned, like taken aback by what Stacey said, but then he kind of goes along with it, saying, how's it her pussy? It's just like, really, the fact that Larry never questioned it, he'd usually question shit like this, but he just kind of went along with it. Unless if it's maybe Stacey and Larry maybe have not open relationship sexually, but maybe they can talk about anything to each other. Maybe they've got a really loose friendship and they kind of just say stuff. I don't know, just really, really odd. I'm just surprised Larry was so comfortable with saying it in front of people who don't understand the subtext of it.
Yeah, it's funny. Even Larry, I think we can say pretty confidently is not the most socially intelligent person. He often says and does things that gets him into sticky situations, and he often doesn't really care about how others feel, about what he says and does. But I think even this level of social unawareness of just him blasé saying, a rash on her pussy, at the doctor's office, and he says it to a bunch of people, and it doesn't even occur to him that it might make the other person feel uncomfortable, or it might just make him sound like a pedophile.
Yes.
Even someone as socially unaware and as self-centered as he is, the fact that he doesn't even consider that, and he just says it so openly, like you said, it doesn't bother him at all. Even that level of him not caring or being unaware was almost like, what? Like,
yeah, I know that was
you realize how this is going to sound to people. Like, you can't just go around referring to this, third person being a child's pussy.
To be honest, I was actually hoping for a cat to turn up at the end of the episode. I was like, please, let this just be an animal. But no, nothing turns up. It's like, oh my God, Larry, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you we're doing this to this small child?
Yeah, like even if it didn't bother him specifically, like even if he was just like, oh, okay, well that's just must be what they call it, whatever. Him not being aware of how it will come across to other people when he says it casually is like, it's almost unbelievable, even for someone as socially unaware and in his own head as Larry David is. It was just like, what?
To be honest, I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. Look, not to delve too much further into this, but not to criticize the curb writing. The writing's amazing in this episode, as you know, as you and I know. But I feel like it would have been better if a cat did actually turn up, and it was in reference to a cat, and maybe because Emma's a little girl, she calls her cat Pussy, like a pussy. You know what I mean? So maybe like she says, oh, Stacey's like, oh, Emma's got a rash on her pussy, aka her own pet cat. And then I don't know, it just would have been like funnier if Larry's gone to all these situations. Everyone thinks he's basically a nonce and at that point, and a groomer, and and then suddenly it's just a cat. It's like, oh, thank God, it's a relief. I don't know. I think that would have been funnier, and that would have closed off that subplot quite nicely. But had to go into that kind of territory where even the doctors go to the receptionist, call the police on this man, and Larry, you can see he's having a good time, after he apologized to her, he's having a good time with the text and stuff, and he's laughing like a child as well. So kind of, just kind of gives it a kind of creepy kind of vibe. I don't know. I don't like it. It's like
you and I are in complete agreement.
Yeah, just the one rash, so to speak, on this episode, on this otherwise fantastic episode.
Yeah, that's the rash. That is the rash on this episode's pussy.
Exactly, and this pussy is like a lion. It's a fantastic fucking strong episode.
Yeah,
so
it's
the only problem.
This episode is Mufasa, and the rash is like one small pimple. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny thing on a big giant episode pussy, but it's still there, and we still have to acknowledge it.
We still have to, yes, indeed. Jason compliments Larry, who's also subtly hinting about Cheryl and the role as to why she got the role, just like Julia did earlier. And Larry says she was the best at the time. George is like, who was second best? And then Larry's like, oh, could be anyone. They argue about the power dynamics, as Larry being an executive producer, Jason just being, he says, one of his minions, quote unquote, an actor, for the rehearsal. Jason asks Larry if he can borrow a pen. Larry gives it to him and tells him to return it when he is done with the pen, and that sets off a chain reaction as well. I love how like that part of the episode, and this part that I'm going to read out as well, I love how it's like one long scene. It's just it's almost like a one shot kind of thing. Really, really cool. It's all in the same area. I appreciate that. Michael is seated and he looks worried about something. Larry approaches him and asks what's wrong. Michael says that his doctor said that he might have Groat's disease, the fictional one. Larry reassures him everything will be fine, as his old accountant, Danny Duberstein, had the disease, and he's fine. Larry says he'll get Danny to call Michael to reassure him. Larry spots Marty Funkhauser at the catering table and asks what the hell he's doing here. Marty says he's here for support, and Larry says he can't be here as he's not part of the production crew. It's crew only. Marty tells Larry to go to Jerry and ask if he can stay. Larry goes up to Jerry and he tells him about Marty, and he says he's one of his good friends and that he's come past and he's not supposed to be here. Jerry says he doesn't care if Marty's here. Larry says, as Larry said, that he is a good friend. Larry says there's a policy, and Jerry says there's no policy about this. And Larry reiterates it's an unwritten policy. And and then Jerry's like, oh yeah, unwritten policy. Like he's familiar with Larry and his policies and unwritten laws and stuff. He's known the guy for decades, so he knows how Larry thinks. So he kind of goes along with it. Oh, yes, the unknown, the unseen, invisible policy. Yes. The unwritten policy, of course. The policy in Larry's mind, basically. Marty introduces himself to Jerry, and he says what appears to be a long but very sweet joke before landing a very gross punchline, which throws Jerry off guard. And Jerry is laughing, and he said he really didn't expect that punchline as Marty walks off. Actually, it was a pretty good joke, actually. Jerry comments that he likes Marty as the director calls everyone over for the table read. Cheryl goes up to Larry and says that she's very nervous about the read. Larry says that she will be great. And Marty, that joke was, I'm not going to say the joke, obviously it's a bit long, but Larry's like, just hurry up with the fucking joke and finish it already.
Yeah.
And Jerry's like, he doesn't know where Marty's going with it. And then he lands that big punchline, and then Jerry's like, oh, fuck, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, he doesn't want Jerry and Marty. He doesn't want Jerry and Marty to become friends because that means he'll most likely hang around on set. If Jerry makes him sort of feel uncomfortable, then there's a chance he'll leave. But I think Larry, just doesn't want them to be friends, so he can go away.
And then it backfires on him, and Jerry says he likes Marty. So, and we see Marty later on the set. So,
what is the punchline? By the way, your cunt's in the sink, or by the way,
cunt's in the sink. Yeah, by the way, your cunt's in the sink. Yeah, you left your cunt in the sink. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And Jerry just loses it.
Another pushy joke as well. Interesting.
Yeah.
Another joke about a vagina. There you go. A bit of a theme here. Yeah, no, Jerry loses it. He loves it. He's like, wow, I didn't expect that at all.
And I like how he just goes, he's not even aware that there's tension between Marty and Larry. I'm sure Larry's mentioned Marty at some point, but he's not aware of like the full story of their sort of frenemy relationship.
No, of course not.
But he's not even aware, and he just incidentally sticks it to Larry by going, I really like that guy.
I really like that guy,
Larry's, Larry in his mind is probably apoplectic. There's the only thing that's missing is steam coming out his ears.
Yes, he's very pissed off at Marty, and he knows Marty's going to come back, and it's pretty much Jerry's welcomed Marty back to the set anytime now, so he can, and we see him later on too. I like how the joke is kind of like, have you heard of the Aristocrats jokes? You know how it's like all disgusting and gross and the worst shit you can think of, and then suddenly it's like a very subtle, like where the Aristocrats is just like a very like bland kind of punchline. This is kind of like a reverse Aristocrats. Like it's all sweet and lovely. Like the woman does that act and whatever. And then, the man leaves her the lovely letter and you think, oh, this is actually quite a sweet joke, despite the fact what she did is yuck. And then like the punchline is almost like the body of the Aristocrats joke. You know what I mean? It's just like so like fucking like out there and gross. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like fucking hell. It's like a reverse. It's like you feel relieved then disgusted rather than Aristocrats where you're disgusted then relieved as well. Mm-hmm. It's just in a way. So I found it interesting. That's all. Yeah. Go back and watch that joke. We're not going to say the whole thing obviously, but go back and watch it.
I feel that.
You feel it. Awesome. The cast and crew are performing scenes from the table read, and it's going very well. Larry spots Jason putting the borrowed pen in his mouth as well as in his ear, and he also even rubs it on his chest. And Larry just is fixated onto Jason, and he can't stop looking at him, and he's really grossed out, which is totally understandable. I mean, if you borrow a pen, if you give someone a pen and they do all that shit to it, you're going to feel grossed out too. So I don't blame him.
Yeah, I'm surprised as well that Jason is just so unaware of what he's doing. When you like focused on something, you might stick your tongue out, or I don't know, like do like a weird, like a repetitive tick or habit or something. You're not even aware that you're doing it. Like I chew on pens. Like if I'm concentrating, reading or watching something, I might just chew on a pen, or I stick my tongue out. Like those things. But they're not. If it's my pen, it's fine. But him. Like if he put the pen in his mouth and he was just unaware because he was so dialed into this table read, I'd be like, okay, I can understand that. But sticking it in your ear and then down your back, I'm like, that to me is like, you couldn't not be aware of that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that. I just couldn't believe that someone would be so like concentrating so hard that they're not aware that they're like scratching their sweaty back with someone's pen. Like it was funny. It was just a bit like, really? Are you that unaware of what you're doing with someone else's pen? Yeah, I don't know, just something I thought about.
Just adding to that, like what you were saying, I think it's a testament to like Jason's dedication to his craft. I think that he gets so, even in table reads, like, cause you said like off air that the Jason is like the more pompous one of the four. He's really like the actor's actor. You know what I mean? And
yeah, well, he comes from theatre. He comes from a theatre background.
That's right. And so he's more like familiar with like range and like really getting into focus and stuff. I feel like Jason, he gets so, even like in table reads, he gets really focused into it. Like you really like table reads usually like you kind of play the character, but you don't have to go like all in on it. You kind of, when I did a couple of short films and stuff, when you did table reads, you kind of, when you do a table read, you kind of do, you kind of act it, but you don't like go all in. You only do it when you're doing the actual scene. I feel like Jason, like, even though he was subtle in a lot of his dialogue, I feel like his process, like that he does even in scenes, was still there. And I think he was so focused on the material, he just forgot about the pen. Like the pen was just kind of like an afterthought, like him putting it in his mouth and his ear. Like he didn't really focus on it. I think he did that more like because he was focusing more on the scene.
Yeah, no,
and the pen was just like a thing he was just doing, and he was doing it involuntarily.
Yeah, no,
that's just the way I saw it. Yeah,
no, that's a good point.
Yeah. I don't know. It just shows how committed Jason is even to a simple table read where Jerry, Julia, and Michael, They didn't go all in on their table read. You see, like in this episode, you see you see them acting out the scene in the table read, but then you see in the final episode, which we're going to do next week, you see how they go like all in on it. In the final recording. Yeah, it's just, but it's funny how Jason he almost goes to that, top level, like recording level. Yep. Yeah. So and I think the pen is just like an object that he doesn't pay attention to. He just puts it in his mouth and all that stuff. Larry says in the next scene, up every orifice, and Jason says, "What? You saw me put the pen up my ass?" Yeah. So I think it's Jason, really.
Yep.
Yeah, Jerry even comments on a later scene like you never lend anything to Jason. I think he knows that Jason does that stuff too. But you make a good point. Yeah. Other actors from the show are also around the table in the read. Estelle Harris, the late Estelle, playing Estelle Costanza, of course, and Steve Heitner as Vanya. And Stephen, I did appreciate how they weren't just part of the furniture. Rather, you actually saw parts of their scenes as well, which is good.
Yeah, it really added to the episode. I was thinking I really appreciate them not just being cast in the episode, but them playing their characters as they were on Seinfeld, and their lines were really good as well. And, if I was watching the episode and they weren't in it, I wouldn't be thinking, oh, geez, I wish there was some secondary characters included. But the fact that they were included, it was just a chef's kiss, a really nice touch, and just one of the many, many fantastic things about this episode overall.
Yeah, for sure. No, it was nice. It added some authenticity to the reunion, and it's certainly something that would have happened.
Yeah, just a couple of little touches that just made the episode even better.
Yeah, for sure. The scene cuts to the table reads of different scenes, and everyone's having a good time, and Jason continues to put the pen in different parts of his body, and Larry is staring at him in disgust, and he's not even focusing on the table read, and the table read ends, so Larry is just so fixated on Jason.
Yeah, he can't concentrate. He's not really he's the only one who's not really in the moment, trying to commit to the table read and get it as good as possible. He's fixated on where that pen's going.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff tells Jerry and Larry that he loved the table read and he says he has to go. Jerry says he wants to meet Larry in his office just to go through a few parts of the script.
Scene A opens in Jerry's apartment, Jerry and George.
It's unwritten etiquette, George.
Who says so?
No one knows. That's why it's unwritten. You don't blow your nose in a cloth napkin in a restaurant.
Why? They wash it.
It's just not done in polite society. It's not done in impolite society. Even the impolite don't do it.
The other day, you sneezed in a napkin.
That's different.
Why?
A sneeze is involuntary. You have 2.5 seconds before the bomb goes off.
Jason offers to return the pen, but Larry says he can keep it. He says that it was in every orifice of his body, and Jason's like, what? Did you see the pen go up my ass as well? Every orifice? Larry asks Jason to get him a new pen. Jason says, for you, Larry, anything, but passively aggressively. And he accepts the favor to go get Larry a new pen. And I can see why. I guess the fictional Curb Jason probably has a few, disgusting things that he does as well, like maybe like he picks his nose or something like that.
Yeah, he might just be a bit of a slob in general, a bit of a grub.
Yeah, at least in this universe anyway. I'm sure he's quite clean in real life. But you can see like there's that professional relationship as well where, Jason, because Larry's the executive producer, Jason kind of has to kind of go with what Larry says. He kind of calls the shots in a way. But, you can see on a personal level, Jason can't stand him. He can't stand Larry at all.
There's a lot of tension there for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Larry and Jeff are at a packed restaurant and the host brings them to a table. He tips the host $20 with a handshake. Larry explains the system that whenever he goes to this particular restaurant, he does a subtle handshake to the host and he gives him $20. So he gets good service and always a table. Larry gets a text from Emma who says that she got his number from her mother, and Larry wonders what to do, and Jeff says, oh, you've got a fan, you just reply back to her. And Larry does so. Larry tells Jeff about Michael's health predicament and his potential growths diagnosis and if he can get in touch with Danny, and Jeff says it's not possible because Danny died 2 months ago from the disease, and Larry doesn't know what to do. He's like, I'm fucked. He's like, oh, I told Michael that they're going to chat, but it probably won't happen. I'm fucked. Jerry and Larry are in Jerry's office discussing parts of the episode. Jerry asks why Larry is so absent-minded, like Jerry's running lines by him and Larry's not giving Jerry anything at all. He explains the Jason pen situation. He tells Jerry tells Larry to never lend Jason anything you can put in your mouth. I can imagine Jerry probably lent Jason a pen during a table read, and Jason probably did the same shit in Seinfeld, and Jerry's like, no, never doing that again. Fuck that.
Yeah, the fact that he says don't lend him anything, to me, says that it's not just pens. Is he probably does gross stuff with other things as well. Seems to
I think he says anything you can put in your body. I think he said anything you can put in your body, don't lend it to Jason.
Yeah. It just it feels like forks and chopsticks and pens and anything that can be sucked on or stuck in an ear or used to scratch your back or whatever has probably been used by Jason and grossed. And I think the fact that Jerry's also, the character Jerry and maybe real life Jerry to a lesser extent is a bit of a germaphobe. He would be very aware of, where his things end up if he's lending them to someone. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, he's at least like fictional Jerry is a big germaphobe. I can imagine real life Jerry's a bit of one too.
He's always very neat and well presented. So, I think that has potentially some credence to it.
Yeah. Larry gets another text from Emma, and he wonders when this will end. Jerry says it'll never end. Once they have your number, that's it. Stacey walks in, and Larry asks how Emma's pussy is going, and Stacey says it's getting better as she walks off, and Jerry looks at Larry in shock as Larry walks off. Yeah, I can see why, because Jerry does know who Emma is, and he does say that Emma's like a cute little girl and stuff like that, and and she's a nice, sweet girl and stuff, and once you go into that territory, I can see why Jerry gets very shocked about it. He's like, what the fuck? And even worse, like Stacey the mother's in on it too. He's just like, what? What am I watching here? What have I just witnessed?
Yeah, no, he's in shock.
Oh yeah, it's great. He does that look that Jerry in Seinfeld does, where he kind of does that he scrunches his face up a little bit and opens his mouth, and he kind of looks back and forth. He does that thing. It's great.
Yeah, he's like, huh?
He's twisting his head. Jerry and Julia are doing a scene rehearsal in the apartment set. Larry and Cheryl are looking on. Wayne Knight as Newman makes an appearance, and we were talking a little bit off air about Wayne Knight in this episode, and he said, Steve, that his goatee makes him a bit more of Newman more of a villain than he was before.
Yeah, he looks a bit more evil. He looks like an evil Tony Stark or something. Tony Dark. We'll call him Tony Dark.
Tony Dark. That sounds good. Yeah. The goatee. I don't know. It was a real 2000s thing. The goatee, wasn't it? They kind of
definitely
kind of works out.
Definitely off the time.
Off the time, yeah. Kramer turns up for his part of the scene with Menina, the prostitute, so Kramer can use the express lane, or a reference to an earlier episode of Curb, and the director yells cut, and they take a 5-minute break. Michael asks Larry about Danny, and if Larry left a message. Larry says he left a message a few days ago, but hasn't heard back. Michael says he can't think about acting, he can't think about the reunion or anything due to his potential diagnosis, and this could probably, because his doctor told him that he has to watch out for symptoms now, so Michael's even more worried and upset, and if he can't act too well, he won't do too well in the reunion. And of course, you can't replace Kramer. You can't replace Michael Richards. Without Kramer, there's no Seinfeld. So you might as well cancel the production there and then.
You can't replace any of them.
No, you can't. If anything happens to any of them, you might as well call it off. It just won't happen.
It's the call for or none.
That's right, indeed. Cheryl tells Larry that she's having a problem with capturing the moment in a scene with Jason, and Larry, gives her some support. She says that, she feels alone in this production, and she feels like, she's not good enough to, work with the other guys, and she says Larry's the only one who's been supporting her in the production, and she's really appreciative, and they kind of have, friendly feelings towards each other in this.
Yeah, there's a bit of familiarity. I mean, obviously they've got the history, but there's a bit of since she's left, most of their interactions up until, halfway through the season have been very friendly, but just friendly. There's been no tension or anything, that would indicate that they used to be married, but now they're starting to get a bit more intimate.
Yes, they are. And you can see the subtle shades of intimacy there, and they kind of go on to the final episode as well, culminate into a very funny ending in the final episode.
Yeah.
Jason observes the both of them as Cheryl walks off. He gives Larry a new pen. Larry complains that this is different to the pen that he lent to Jason, and they argue about the pen. Jason says a pen's a pen, it doesn't matter. But Larry's like, no, I want that particular pen. They go on a huge tangent, a huge argument about it, which is great.
Yeah, I do like the different points of view about what constitutes a replacement. Jason is saying that, well, they produce the same output, which is they write in blue ink. So therefore it's, 1 for 1, whereas Larry's more focused on not what it does, but what it's made of, its quality or, the actual thing itself. They're coming at the point of what is a replacement, from different angles. I liked that tension.
Yeah. They kind of trying to justify their beliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
Later on, Leon and Larry are at a newsstand, and Larry asks him if he can play Danny for a couple of minutes in Michael's dressing room while Larry is in the room with them. Leon is confident he can do it, and he recites how he'll play the role. And Larry can say that he was adopted by a Jewish family, and Leon says that he was bar mitzvahed rather than bar mitzvah, and Larry keeps saying, no, it's bar mitzvah, not bar mitzvah. He's like, say bar mitzvah, bar mitzvahed. Larry gets frustrated. He receives another text from Emily, which annoys him. Larry spots the host from the restaurant. He goes to shake the guy's hand, and Larry, who had the $20 to buy Leon's magazine, the host takes it out of his hand, and Larry wonders why the host thought that was a tip. He thought, why am I tipping this guy? I'm seeing him on the street. He's like, what the fuck? He just takes his $20 on the street. It's
yeah, it's a bit weird.
It's a bit weird, but I don't know, Larry. I don't know. It's weird. Like, why did Larry have that $20 note in his hand while he shook someone's hand? I don't know. That's weird, but yeah,
he didn't have it in his wallet. You know, it was just in his hand, ready to go.
And he's like, he took my $20 for nothing.
Yeah. But saying that, like, even though, you know, it's weird, I can understand, like, if that's their routine and then it happened again, even in a different context, they'd be like, oh, okay, like this is what we do, so it's happening again. You know, I wouldn't be like, oh, hang on, is this the same thing? Or am I just taking $20 by accident? I'd go, oh, okay, he's tipping me again. Sure.
Yeah, sure. I'd take it too, to be honest.
Yeah, you know.
I think it's the same thing. But yeah, Larry gets upset. He gets a text message from Emma, and he gets really annoyed, and he writes, not an angry one, he calls it in a later scene enthusiastic text. But he's got like exclamation marks and everything like that. Because she asks Larry, does he watch Wizards of Waverly Place? I think that's like a Disney Channel show. And Larry's like, I don't watch Wizards of Waverly Place. I'm an adult! Exclamation marks.
Yeah, very boomer post.
Yeah, very boomer. Yeah, indeed. All caps and everything. Fucked up.
Yep. That's a text you get from your dad, and you go, "Why are you angry, Dad?" And he's like, "I wasn't angry. I just had the caps lock on."
Yes, exactly. I just left it on by accident. Oops.
Yeah.
Yes. Stacey's at the studio, and she asked Larry why he yelled at Emma through text, and Larry says he wasn't yelling, it was enthusiastic with the exclamation marks. And she goes, it was all capital letters, and it looked like you were angry, and Emma got very upset. She says Larry needs to make this right and asks her to take them out for lunch at 1 p.m. to make up for it as she walks off. And mind you, Larry has to be at Michael's dressing room by 2 o'clock for the Leon/Danny role play sort of thing. So he's a bit tight on time.
Yeah.
Larry gets a table at the same restaurant by the host, and he's introduced. Like the host says hello to him, puts him at the table, and he goes. Larry shakes the host's hand, and the host wonders where the money is. I like how the host is also shaking Larry's other hand, and at one point he's shaking both of them at the same time. It's like, where's my $20? Where's my $20?
Yeah, he's really trying to drop the hint of like, okay, you can tip me now. He's like, yeah,
and
then he just flat out asks.
And Larry explains the situation at the newsstand. He said, I didn't mean to tip you $20. That $20 I was meant to buy a magazine with, and he took it out of my hand. So that tip, you know, it's the tip, the $20 that I would have given you today, you took yesterday at the newsstand.
I did like how Larry said, what, do you think I just had $20 ready to go in case you showed up?
Yeah. It's just like you're just expecting $20 everywhere you go.
Yeah, he just carries it around with him at all times just in case he runs into him.
In LA, of all places, you know, that really small town LA, you know, population of 100 people, you know, of course you run into him.
Exactly.
The host claims that the tip was for the wonderful service from the other day. And Larry said you already tipped him for it. And the host walks off in frustration. Stacey and Emma arrive and sit down. Larry apologizes about what happened to them. He asks for menus, but all of the waiters can constantly ignore him on purpose. So I think the host has dropped the hint to all the waiters saying, don't serve this man.
Yeah.
He didn't tip. He asks a nearby waiter for menus as he says that the girl on the table has a rash on her pussy and needs to go to the doctor soon. And even the waiter's like, what the fuck? Yeah. The rash on her pussy thing's kind of getting a bit old at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit tired.
Yeah.
Because it's just the same thing. It's just like he says it, and the person that hears it or that he says it to is extremely uncomfortable and doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, and the fact that there's no cat at the end of all this makes it even sillier.
Yeah.
You know, if there was a payoff, like a big payoff at the end, then good, but yeah. I don't know, it's just weird. Michael answers the door in his dressing room, and Leon is dressed up. You know, is it like Black Panther or something? No, what's that? Is it like the Brotherhood? What was that black Muslim group? He's dressed up like, I think Larry says he's dressed up like Farrakhan or something.
Yeah, I don't know what he's referencing there, but I think I've got a vague idea of like the group or the religion or whatever that he's referring to, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah. It's like black Muslim or something. I don't know. It's just funny. Larry describes him as looking like Farrakhan in the next scene. Great. I love how when Michael sees it's like a black man, he begs him not to hurt him as it's been many years. And for those who don't know, that's a reference to Michael's infamous Laugh Factory gig from a few years prior. So I appreciate how they're making jokes about it.
Yeah, they're kind of working everyone's issues or controversies or whatever into the episode, and they're kind of making fun of themselves, and I think that's really healthy and real good.
It is, yeah. And Michael thinks Leon's come to beat him up for the joke. The joke that landed him in pretty much almost ended his career 3 years prior to the episode. Leon asks if Larry is here because Leon thought that Larry was going to be there, but Larry's running late because of the restaurant because not being served. And Michael grabs Leon and brings him in. Leon, aka Danny, in this case. The scene cuts back to the lunch as Larry says he has to go, but Stacey insists that he stays. He gives Emma a pen as she wants to be a writer, and she accepts Larry's apology and goes to hug him as Larry says he has to go. Leon is playing along and is answering questions about his Jewish heritage with Michael, and Michael's very confused because Michael's like, so you've had bar mitzvah? And Leon's like, yeah, I've been bar mitzvahed 3 times. And even Michael's like, don't you only get bar mitzvahed once and you're 13 years old? And he goes, no, but you have to get bar mitzvahed to keep it up. You got to do it every 13 years.
You got to top it up.
You got to top it up every 13 years. I love that.
Even I'm not Jewish. I've never been to a bat mitzvah. I don't have any Jewish people in my life as friends. I've never really interacted with Jewish culture in any significant way. But, even I know that a bat mitzvah is a one-off rite of passage where a boy becomes a man. Yeah. The fact that Leon doesn't know anything about it, nothing, is just so I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it shouldn't be surprising. I don't know. But it's just surprising that he doesn't even know, even the general idea of what a bat mitzvah is. It's, yeah. I mean, it's hilarious, but it's just...
It's just great. Yeah, it's like he has no idea about it. Just talk shit. And even Michael's at the point where normally he'd probably argue about it, but Michael, he's just exasperated, after his potential diagnosis and stuff. He's like, oh, whatever, I don't care. It's I don't want to argue. It's it's fine. Michael asks him about groats as the scene cuts to Larry running from the nearby restaurant. Cuts back to Leon, who claims his groats was cured, and Michael asks how it was done. The scene cuts to Larry driving back to the studio, racing back to the studio in his car. Larry pulls up outside. Leon is just leaving Michael's dressing room. Larry asks about Leon's suit, and Leon claims he was with a Muslim girl for a little while and he had to wear the suit. And he said, quote unquote, it was the whitest shit that he had. The whitest clothes that he has. He asks about how Michael took the story, and Leon says Michael was so engrossed by Leon, aka Danny, that Michael even offered $200,000 for him to invest on his behalf. So Michael was just so engrossed by Leon. It's just, he loved it. Yeah, he was like, here's $200,000, do something with it. It's great. Yeah. But I think at that point Michael was so in the dumps about his potential diagnosis, he just didn't care. He didn't, Normally he would have been more rational, but in this case, he's like, whatever.
Yeah, I think he was just he was so relieved to get a quote unquote diagnosis and find out that it can be okay. That he's so overwhelmed with gratefulness and relief that he's just going to give this strange man who obviously lies through his teeth and is just a wackadoo $200,000.
Yeah, it's like, why not?
He has no financial qualifications at all. He's supposed to be a doctor, and now all of a sudden he's a financial advisor or a banker or something.
I know, it's great. Leon and Larry are watching the Newman scene from before. Leon's like, who are these guys? And Larry says, that's Jerry Seinfeld and Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah.
And he's like, they're fucking, aren't they? As in Elaine and Jerry. And Larry's like, you never watched the show. How do you don't watch the show, do you? Larry complains about being itchy all over. He suspects that Emma may have given her something. Newman walks in and Leon says, who's this fat guy? Who's this fat dude? He's funny. Michael enters the scene and he's wearing Leon's hat. The cast all break character and they ask about Michael's hat. And Jerry says that he can't wear it. He's not allowed to wear it. And Larry asks Leon why he's wearing the hat, and Leon admits that when he spoke to Michael as Danny, he said that the hat was a cure for groats, and if he takes it off, then he'll die. As he walks off. See, with a fake disease, you can make anything up, can't you?
Yeah, that a hat.
Yeah.
Will cure you. But it's funny how, he wasn't wearing the hat before he met Leon, and he wasn't going to die, but as soon as he puts the hat on and then takes it off again, he's going to die.
Yeah, I know. That's how desperate Michael is for an answer. Yeah. Marty introduces Larry to Danny's widowed wife. As Michael goes to her and thanks her after talking with her husband and saying that he talked to Danny very recently. She says that he might be mistaken as her husband died 2 months ago. Michael cries out for Larry, almost like Kramer. He's like, Larry, Larry, Larry.
Yeah,
it's almost like something Kramer would do.
Yeah, his whole world's just been thrown. Like he was really upset, and then he got relief, and now it's just all upset again. He's on a bit of a roller coaster.
Oh, he sure is. Michael goes up to Leon, who's outside the studio. Leon's trying to flirt with the actress who plays Menina, and he yells at him, and there's a crowd waiting, I'm guessing waiting to get into like a studio for a filming or something. They're all watching Michael, and he's getting angry at Leon, and everyone takes out their phones and records him, implying that Michael is still racist after the incident from 3 years prior at the Laugh Factory. Michael realizes he's being filmed, and he walks off in frustration. Yeah,
what does he say? He's like, I could call you a word right now that would really upset you, or something like that.
Yes, that's really right. Angry. Really angry, yeah. And people are recording it, and then he looks at everyone and he's like, oh, come on.
Yeah. He's like,
Yeah. It's so good how, like, they could have easily, like, not referenced it, but the fact that they referenced it, it's, it's good. It's good.
I think it was kind of really important too, because it's not like Michael Richards, went through that situation, took 6 months off or a year off, and then came back and did like a bunch of acting and appearances between when that happened and then this episode. Like he just disappeared for years.
Yeah, it basically killed his career.
This was his first major reappearance, so for them to not address it, I think would have been a bit weird. If he'd done like 10 movies and 2 TV shows and people had kind of forgotten about it because he's done a bunch of new stuff, it wouldn't be as weird. But this is the first major appearance, and it's just funny, it's a good opportunity to make fun of something that had that upset all sorts of people in all sorts of different ways. So
yeah, it's fun. and he's getting recorded just as he says, I can call you something that'll make you very upset.
Yeah.
To Leon, it's good. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it would have been weird if they never addressed it.
Yeah.
But it's cool that Michael was cool with it being laughed at as well. Like, it's good.
Yeah, it would be weird. It would be weird if he wasn't cool with it. It would be like, well, you claim that you're not really like that, and you've apologized, and Jerry's vouched for you. If you're not willing to make fun of it, then that kind of like goes against the spirit of you trying to, make amends for it.
Yeah, definitely. But I think Michael was pretty cool with it. He's already atoned for it and everything like that. And
I think so.
Yeah. And like you said, Jerry, there was that, I think it was Letterman, Jerry was on, and then I think Michael, he had like a video apology, but everyone thought it was like a joke or something, but Jerry was like, no, this is real. He's actually really sorry for what he did. Everyone thought it was like a skit or something. But no, he was genuinely upset. Apparently it really upset him, after what he did and stuff. And but it's good. It's good. Good that he's back in the Curb universe anyway.
Yeah.
In the final scene, Larry shows the doctor his rash, and Larry explains his friendship with Emma. He talks about Emma like they're, good friends and stuff, but it sounds like to the doctor that's like more of a sexual relationship. He talks about the rash on her pussy and how they're on and off again, in terms of like being friends, not a romance. And all these kind of subtle things that make it sound like that him and Emma are actually in a relationship, which is absolutely wrong. And the doctor is very disgusted, and he says he's just got to go see another patient. He'll be back in a minute. He goes up to his receptionist and tells the receptionist to call the police, and Larry is laughing like a little child at his text exchanges with Emma as the episode ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so even the doctor's like, oh, fuck that. It's like there's this pedo in my office.
And after like 4 people hearing it, he's the first person that does something about it beyond just being shocked.
Takes action. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Takes action on it. Yeah, I know, definitely. So good. Oh, but well, as a doctor, I'd imagine he's probably dealt with like, kids as well who've been assaulted and, things like that. So he understands the gravity of the situation. If he hears something like that, he'll go full like doctor mode and, go to the authorities,
Yeah, I mean,
he's probably seen what's happened. Yeah, Hippocratic Oath. Yeah,
like,
exactly. So
yeah, he's got more of a moral obligation to act on what he thinks has gone wrong. Yeah,
for sure. So he did the right thing here, even though Larry just said it the wrong way. He said it as if they were in like an on and off again relationship, which is fucked up. And even Larry wasn't aware, which is really shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, a very small rash on an otherwise fantastic episode, like we said before. Yeah.
A pimple on a Mufasa.
On a lion. That's right. the rash on that big pussy. Yeah. Anyway, that was the table read. One of my favorite episodes of season 7, Steve. An absolute classic. 4.5 Larrys out of 5. What about you?
5 out of 5 for me. This is This is probably top 5 episode ever. Other than the pussy rash. And I don't think that detracted from the episode at all. I just think it could have been done a bit, like if they just added that extra scene where it was a cat and everyone finds out, or Larry, like it clarifies everyone thinking that Larry's a pedo, or
that would have been fine.
I just think it would have been, but I don't think it took away. It just was like, it was put out there. It was just like he said, this thing was constantly being said, and it's like a huge, has a lot of weight to it. And it was just, that was it. Like there was nothing that sort of countered it. And it was just a bit like, whoa. But I adore this episode. I think it's just as a Curb episode, as, the sort of the first part of the, the official like Seinfeld reunion on the show, where they're all together doing their thing. There was so many intertwining storylines. Like this is a really busy episode, but it never felt out of control. Sometimes, when they try and do 3, 4, 5 storylines with lots of moving parts, it feels too complicated. Like they just can't bring it all together. This was that one. This was an example of when, everyone, like it was so tight and so good and just, hilarious. I can't praise this episode enough. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it was very, very good. I really enjoyed it too. And certainly one of the best of the season. Yeah. It was the closest that we would have ever gotten to experience the behind the scenes process of doing a Seinfeld episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like in a visual universe, and what the reunion could have been at that time. Yeah.
100%. And I think it also did a really good job of setting up the season finale, which we'll be talking about next week. It just really, like, it was a fantastic episode in and of itself, but it did the job of like setting up a season finale as it should too.
Yeah, it had. Yeah. And there's lots to talk about next week, which we're looking forward to.
For sure.
That was Curbcast. Thank you very much for listening. You can find us on pretty much any podcast service, Apple, Spotify, yada, yada, any of those sort of ones. And thank you for your support. Be sure to, tell your friends and family who like Curb about our podcast, and hopefully they jump on board, and we hope you're enjoying the episodes as well. You can also support us financially, patreon.com/mishmash media. You do get these episodes a bit earlier than the general public for as little as $1 a month.
That's right.
My name's Ivan.
And I'm Stephen.
We'll catch you for the season finale for season 7 of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Seinfeld. Looking forward to it. We'll catch you then.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is part of Mishmash Media, an independent podcast network. Follow us on social media at Mishmash Media AU or support us on Patreon. All those links are in the show notes.